Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. As has already been said, I'm so honoured to be here and to be asked by my dad and my mother to be here. I do want to, I've got roughly an hour, less than an hour, it's fine. So I will talk probably for about 20 minutes, but I do want this to be really interactive and then open it up for questions that you might have as well. So let me go to give you a bit of an overview. I will talk very briefly about my journey. As was said by Brother Philip, this isn't about middle management. It's about how you step up from middle management into the executive. Can you hear me? No. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. I'll then talk about some of the strategies as well that I had used and that I've developed, and then I'll open up for questions and reflections as well. One of the things that I was just reflecting on the talk that we've just had was just how, especially growing up with my parents, it was a lot. They came from Nigeria. It was a lot about surviving, being able to survive in this country. So for them, they really had to negotiate what it was like to work in this country, to be able to educate us as well. So when I say us, there's myself, there's my older sister, there's my younger brother, but I think any of the three of us could have come here today to talk. My sister's also a doctor and a director, and my brother is also a director as well. So there's something there around how they successfully navigated in quite a very difficult context in the UK, but have had very successful children. But also I'm mindful of what was said before, that getting to the executive level isn't just success. Being an all-rounder, being happy, knowing the Lord, having a happy family definitely is around success. So just to add that caveat to there as well. Also, just to name that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my parents, for their love, for their sacrifice, for their generosity. And you know my parents very well. In the car on the way here, I was speaking with Brother Colin, and we're laughing at how very different my parents are. So you've got my mum, who's very, I don't know if she's strict anymore, if you see her as strict, but growing up, she was very, very strict. So she was the disciplinarian. And then my dad was very soft, but also listened. But I was explaining to Brother Colin that actually the softest of my parents is actually my mother. She's the most loyal. She would defend me all the time. And she's the person that really has driven me to where I am. So I know they're not here, but it is always a huge thank you to them as well. Thank you. So if I go on to the next stage, I do have an interactive, I don't know if you know Mentimeter, but I'm going to ask you just to use your phone just to answer this question. So the question that I'm asking you is, where do you plan to be in 10 years' time? It's a question that was asked of me 5 years ago, and then I'll talk a bit about my journey. But if I just come out of here and ask you to fill, hopefully, I don't know if it's not come on. It's come up on my laptop, but it's not come up on the screen. I don't know if you could help me with the someone. I'll just move to here. Yeah. Thank you. So if you could, just 2 minutes just for you to think about, where do you plan to be in 10 years? And if you do have your phone, if you can go to either scan the code, the QR code, if you're that technology savvy, or go to menti.com and just enter in this code, just so that your answers can come up on here anonymously. It'll be really good to get where people's aspirations are in the room, where people do see themselves in 10 years' time. When I was asked this question, please do fill that in, and your answers and responses will come up on here. But whilst you're doing that, I will just talk, because when I was asked this question, at first I thought I could immediately answer, but then it was something that I had to think through. And then I was asked, in 5 years' time, what do you need to do to then get to this 10 years as well? And that was really a helpful question that made me really think and start to be very intentional in my journey and where I wanted to go. So if you could just put in, if you thought about it, where do you plan to be in 10 years? Just fill that in. And as you're filling it in, it'll just come up on the screen. Brilliant. So we've got someone who wants to be a managing director in 10 years, a chief information officer, a skilled data analyst, we've got 33 people signed up, so if you just put them in, they'll come through. So an educational psychologist, a CEO, the chief financial officer, these are great. An innovator, I love, a business owner, a real estate consultant, subject matter expert, chief data scientist, a CIO. Just wait for a few more because quite a few people are on there. An innovator, a great mum. I love whoever put on a great mum as well. That's what I want to be as well. A fulfilled father of 4. Have a successful business, a thriving business owner, working on my retirement, definitely very important as well. A group CEO. We've got someone here who wants to be a millionaire. Lovely. A PhD holder in my field, a mentor, CEO of a multinational organization, probably a human resources professional, international organizational consultant. And now they're coming in much faster, having a thriving business, a great woman coach, thank you, a transport minister, academic researcher. So already what we're seeing is that people have very high aspirations of where they want to be in 10 years. And I absolutely love all of these that are on here. A professor as well, a director of transport as well, and a pastor of a church, a consultant. So there's a lot of aspiration in the room, and that's lovely to see. The next question, as I said, that I was asked was, this is where you want to be in 10 years. So in 5 years, what do you need to do? Where do you need to be in order to get to that 10 years? And that's a much harder question because you really then have to think, actually, what am I doing right now? What do I need to be doing next year? Where do I need to be in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years? And when I was asked that question, it was a very poignant moment for me. I was asked that question by a coach. I'll talk in a minute around why a coach is very helpful. But I was asked that question by a coach, and that allowed me to really reflect and think about what I wanted to be and where. So let me talk very briefly about this. Opens up. Okay. So I was asked this at that time when I was asked this was 4 years ago. I was band 8A, and so anyone here is in the NHS, you know that's like middle management, band 8A. I was on my PhD as well, and at that time I was a mother of 3. So for some people that's fulfilled, that's successful, and I absolutely agree that it is. I wanted to do more. I didn't know what that was, but I definitely knew that I wanted to do more. I was a clinician, so I was a psychotherapist, psychologist. I was working with lots of families. I was enjoying what I did, but I always thought bigger than that. And by bigger, I didn't mean doing more. I used to always think strategically. And I used to always have questions around processes and how things worked and why they worked that way and wanting to do things very different. So I was very, very curious. So at that point, I was asked that question. And then 4 years later, which is where I am now, as was said, now I'm a director in a local authority. So I've had a big jump from the 8A to where I am. I'm on an advanced fellowship and I'm a mother of 5. But where I want to be in 10 years is, thank you, where I want to be in 10 years is some people put on their CEO. I also want to be a CEO. I want to be thriving academically, and I don't want any more children. So I still am happy with the 5 that I've got. But what I want to do is talk to you about this jump. And as was said in the introduction, that it's the jump from middle management into the executive. They're very different skills. You can work hard. Everyone that gets to AA, middle management, head of service, whatever the phrase is, you work hard, you've got drive, you've got intention. None of that is what gets you to the executive level. And that's what I do want to be able to speak about with you today as well. Okay, I probably won't go to this, but what I wanted to ask you is, I gave you four options. There's different skills that are needed to break into the executive suite. And I asked questions around, is it drive? Is it intellect? None of those are the things, but there's something about executive presence that I think is very important. And these are the things that I'll talk about now in the next 15 minutes that I've got. Okay, so I'm going to go through 5 strategies. The first one that I'll start off with is around connections. And by connections, I mean to lead at an executive level, it's very important that you establish strategic alliances. And that's because when you move into the executive level, what you need is insight, you need awareness, you need perspective around the organization. You need to know some of the current challenges, the future challenges. And really, I don't know how I would have known that as an AA if I didn't have connections within the organization. So one of the things that I was really encouraged to do was to start to try and meet other directors, meet other people that were higher up in the organization, email them, connect with them, talk to them about some of the things that I was thinking about, volunteer, take up different suggestions, look at some problems that they have and start to offer some solutions. So in that sense, it was really taking myself out of my comfort zone, starting to have conversations with people that ordinarily I wouldn't have conversations with. But I started to do that. And it's very important, or the word isn't important, but you'll see that it's very interesting that people at the top really do want to have those conversations with other people. So whilst I was quite worried about emailing and contacting them, it was something that they were very willing and happy to take me on board and to have those conversations with me as well. Those strategic alliances aren't just up, they're all around. So you're looking at different peers in your organization. You're looking at different people that you can connect with, that you know, that you can start to speak with. And the other thing about having this, we call it a network. It could be a strategic network, it could be an operational network. But the thing about having this network is that you can start to have these discussions, you can start to have and understand what the issues are strategically, you can start to be involved in those conversations. In middle management, it's really about focusing on the day-to-day work, making sure that operationally things are moving, things are successful. When it comes to the executive level, you're looking at the future. So you're looking higher above the day-to-day, and you've really got to start to understand, what would things be like for this organization in 5 years, in 10 years? What are some of the challenges that we have? How can we really bring the organization forward? And that's a real different shift in mindset, which took me some time to pick up, but it's definitely something that is very important to think about. It's no longer about, it depends whatever your organization, around the number of beds in the hospital or around how many bins are being moved. It isn't about the operational day-to-day. It really is about the culture of this organization and where do we want to move it to. I'm just making sure that I am speaking at a level that everyone is good enough for people. Like, is this okay? What I'm saying? It's very high level, but I'm just checking the temperature that it's not just over people's heads. I'll talk a bit about being a relational leader, which is one of the things that I've learned from my parents that I take into everything that I do as well. But one of the things that I do want to say is just about the importance of building your reputation, making sure that when people at the top are talking about different problems that they have and who can we go to, that your name is there, your name is being mentioned. And the only way that you can do that is about connecting with people, making sure that you're there to offer solutions rather than problems. So many times now, even in my workplace, I have people who will email me with problems and with challenges, which is fine, but come with those solutions as well, because I don't have all the answers. Even as a leader, the answers are not within just me. There is that need to collaborate. So really thinking about making sure you have a reputation in your organization where you're focused on solutions as well. And that's something that's really important. Lastly, on here, I've got something around systems thinking. And it's just to say that everything is connected. And it's important when you're building those relationships, when you're speaking to whoever the next person is, to know that everything is connected, and you want to make sure that you build and you pay attention to the relationships that you're building as well. The second one that I've got here is coaching, which is one of the things that I spoke about before. There's something that's very important about investing in yourself. And we do this, the previous talk around parents, we give lots to children, we give lots to other people. And sometimes I definitely acknowledge that, having children, doing a PhD, you have time for nothing There's something so important in being able to invest in yourself, being able to use coaching as a way to navigate, to understand, having some space to actually talk about you, what you need to do in terms of work professionally. And coaching can really transform you as a leader. It did for me. It was a space where I started to think about what my leadership style was. I knew what I was like as a manager, but it's very different being a manager to being a leader. So that was a place where I was really able to talk and think about how I led, what that looked like. There's something called a 360, which some people might know around doing, and that's where you give a questionnaire to everyone, your peers, people above, people below you as well, to start to get an understanding of how people see you, how people understand you, how people see how you manage or how you work with them. These are things really holding that mirror up to yourself, which sometimes can be very difficult, but holding up that mirror to yourself to really understand what type of leader am I think is very important. And I'll come on to that soon as well. But also, what as executive leaders, we're really being asked to lead in times of crisis. So every time I put up Birmingham City Council, but I'm sure you're very aware of the bankruptcy that we're going through at the moment, and the uncertainty, the ambiguity, and the fear that lots of staff have around where they'll be and what they'll be working, whether or not they'll have jobs. And within this time, real transformational leadership is really required. So I have to dig very deep to motivate, to inspire, to really think about the solutions, the opportunities. So I've had lots of talks with different staff members around, even though things are difficult, there's opportunities in this which we can really drive. And whilst things are difficult and I can be really scared and worried even as a leader, there is that need to be able to always inspire, to motivate as others. And the coaching, I had coaching 4 years ago. I would never exist without coaching. I have coaching now. That is such a space where I can take everything off in terms of being a leader and really think about myself, what I need to do to be able to inspire and motivate others as well. Coaching really helps you in terms of clarifying what your goals are. So that question that I asked at the beginning, like I said, that was the first question that was asked of me, of the coach, in terms of where do you actually want to be in 10 years and where do you want to be in 5 years and what do you need to do now? So again, it really clarifies what that goals were. So everyone's put up what their aspirational goals are, but this is a really helpful space as well. Also, when thinking about the executive level, I said to you before that by the time you get to middle management, everyone's intelligent, everyone's smart, everyone knows what they're doing. But what steps you aside into the top bit is really that emotional intelligence, is really thinking about, strategically thinking about things, like I mentioned, not the day-to-day, but the future. Emotional intelligence, and I will touch on it a bit later as well, is how you hold yourself, how you respond to others. I am very much a compassionate leader, and I can say that with confidence, knowing that whoever you speak to that works with me, underneath me or above me, can definitely testify that I'm a compassionate leader. I work emotively. I think about people, what their needs are. These are things that you can develop with the emotional intelligence, and it really sets people aside as well. And also promoting engagement. And by that, I mean being able to develop those relationships, communicate with people, those interpersonal communication, those listening capabilities are all really key. As I'm speaking, it sounds like I'm talking about very soft skills. It is. I am talking about soft skills that's needed, because that executive presence is there and exists in all of those soft skills that need you to get to where you are. But not everyone has that, and that's something that's really important to think about. And I do feel that coaching really helps you to build on those skills as well. I just touched on compassion, so that's the third one. But really, what I'm talking about is that executive presence. This is how you view yourself as a leader, and also how you can be intentional about how you need to improve as well. So until I started coaching, I really stumbled across things. So even to get to the Band AA to do my PhD, I could tell you a whole story of how I got there, what that meant, how many jobs I was juggling, how I was juggling that with my children. So really, whether the master's degrees that I did or the PhD that I did those because I was curious, I was passionate about different areas, and I wanted to be involved with them. But actually, coaching really helped me think about my intention and about my plan, and really having that successive plan that wasn't there before, but that I really needed to get to where I wanted to as well. And so these soft skills, when it comes to executive leadership, are really important. Again, like I said, middle management, everyone's capable, but it's not really the technical skill that's needed to get into executive management. It really is that executive presence. And by that, I mean the first impressions. When people see you, you'll be curious to hear about the conversations that the CEO has with all the rest of us. She sees people. So our CEO is Deborah Cadman in Birmingham, and she will talk to the level of knowing people, and that's someone to watch out for. That's someone that you need to look out for. And so your first impressions are so important. Being able to effectively navigate office politics. Often people want to step out of them. So that's something my mum would always tell me, just stay away, don't get involved. Actually, I need to be involved and I need to be seeking solutions. So people know that if there's trouble, if there's difficulties or there's conflict, speak to Temitope, she'll help us resolve it. And that is something that I always originally or naturally I'd step out of, but I intentionally started to get involved and really think about solutions there as well. We've already touched on interpersonal skills. So those, those saying hello, checking how people are. For me, my staff, I have a head of service of 12 middle managers. I know all their children. I know all their birthdays. I know all about them. When I speak with them, I can talk specifically about issues that they have. And so those interpersonal skills are so important and crucial to have as well. I've got here body language, and that's so important as well, because you sometimes, I'm talking about staff that I see where at work they might be slumped, or they might look like they really don't want to be there, or I really dragged myself into work today. All that is so important. You have to be passionate. You have to be seen as wanting to be there, wanting to make a difference, wanting to do something different as well. So that body language is very important, and you really are seen. So again, in our executive discussions, we talk to the name of naming staff, talking about staff, and the chief executive, like, I don't want that person near here. They're not helpful, but this person I'd want there. So knowing that you are being seen in an organization, and I can only talk from an organization perspective because that's what I'm in, is really important as well. Other things like exuding authentic charisma. By that, it's being yourself. I'm not openly someone that chats with everyone, but I know things that I'm passionate about, and I'll get involved and I'll talk, and I'll either agree or disagree. I'll be open, but I'm also mindful of who I'm speaking to, who's there, and making sure that I'm that person that people want to speak with and talk with as well. And then finally, just around self-awareness. I guess people sometimes aren't really aware of how they come across to others. And so being reflective, I think, is very important as well. So that's something that I've learned as a psychologist in terms of reflective, but it's something that everyone should be aware of. Really thinking about, how am I seen? How do people hear me? How do people view me? What conversations have I had with people? How can I do things differently? And when it comes to conflict, how do I manage that conflict? An example of when I started as a director, I had someone who's quite similar age. So I'm the youngest director in Birmingham, and I had someone that was similar age as me that was head of service. And she really conflicted. She didn't really appreciate me being the same age as her, and really struggled with that. But it's something that I really worked at. She gave a grievance against me in the first week, which was something I've never had before. So she made a formal complaint about me, but it wasn't something that I took personal. For me, it was something that a relationship that I needed to work on, that I needed to develop. I was the leader, so it was me that needed to humble myself, take that step down, really try to understand what was happening for her and see how we could work together. She's now my biggest fan. She will talk about me everywhere positively, but it's because I'm able to do that. So there's something really around your self-awareness, how you humble yourself, because that is also very important as well at that level. And the reason why I talked about compassion is because that's something that I would use always, whether I'm talking to the cleaner in one of the hospitals that I would work in, or whether I'm talking to my peer. I would talk in the same way and talk with compassion with everyone. And that's something that's carried me throughout carried me throughout my career, but something definitely for these 4 years, that people can really come to me because of the compassionate leadership that I have. And just to say, compassionate doesn't mean that I'm weak. I'll have tough conversations, I'll have difficult conversations, but these are things that are there. But for me, it's telling you to find something that for you is your leadership style. And we'll come on to leadership style in a minute, as well as another strategy as well. So this point is around strategic thinking, and I kind of touched on it earlier. there's a mind shift that is needed from middle management to executive level. So as I said before, whilst you might think around the operational day-to-day, how things are running, thinking strategically means thinking ahead, means thinking about the long-term impact, means thinking about the larger goals of the organization and how you fit into those, or your service fits into those as well. And it might sound like quite a fluffy word now, and how do I think strategically if I'm not there as an executive? You absolutely can. So for me, as the band AA or as the head of service, as I was in another organization, I would often send emails to my director to talk about what I think we could be doing strategically, not in a disrespectful way, but actually in offering certain ideas around things, about how we could do things differently. So the opportunities are absolutely there. And again, my sister mentioned earlier about this, the culture in the UK, how you query, you question everything. That's what people want. So those emails that I sent were very welcomed. People wanted to hear, actually, what are other people on the ground thinking? And they're really welcome. So for me, it's don't be shy. Don't think that you're being disrespectful. It's actually really welcome that you're coming up with different ideas, that you're thinking strategically around the future. And another example is definitely, my background is in adult social care and children's social care. I would often talk about the perspective of families from Black African communities. So I'd work in different boroughs in London where there's different pockets of Black African communities. So I'd be the person that's saying, actually, when we're thinking around this community, these are some of the things that we should be thinking about. This is how we can negotiate. This is how we can connect with faith groups and everything else. These are all things that I knew, and that was welcomed. And so really do reach out of your comfort zone is definitely one of the strategies that there. And that's how you can do that strategic thinking, by talking about things that you already know as well. I just wanted to touch on, again, when thinking strategically, often in crisis, things are really unpredictable, but there's often great opportunities in crises. And that's a point where you really can think about strategically, how can I be involved in those conversations that are happening in executive levels? And again, for me, like I've mentioned, the bankruptcy in Birmingham City Council, I've then had different ideas of what we could do, how we could think about innovation, but using frugal innovation, something that I learned when working in Sierra Leone, as I did, and lived in Tanzania. So things from our continent I brought here, because I know that there's things that we could do differently when we've got different resources. Again, it's thinking innovatively and sharing those ideas, and going back to the point at the beginning of building your reputation, making yourself known, and making sure that they see you as someone that has solutions as well. Strategic, before I move on, but strategic leadership is also a style, and I will go on to leadership styles now, because these are the three things that I say I have as my leadership style. One is compassion, one is strategic leadership, and the other one is transformational leadership. So for me, my point to you is, in terms of know what your leadership style is, develop a leadership style if you have one already and you want to build on that. Read up, there's lots of different leadership styles that you'll be able to work on, and know what that is and work within that too. So for me, it's always an honor to lead, to have people who trust me, to look to me for direction. It's something that I'm always humbled by. It's something that I never take for granted, and it's something that I express often with people, that I'm always honored that people trust me to lead them. And throughout the brief talk that I've had, I've touched on those three different leadership styles as well. But different circumstances cause you to change your leadership style and to lean into those. And I do really encourage you to learn what those leadership styles are and what fits for you. Compassionate leadership might not fit for you, it does for me, but really try and find out what that is for you as well. And in terms of, very briefly, in terms of different leadership styles, as an executive leader, you're the person that carries the vision. You're the person that holds that thinking. You're the person that needs other people to buy into that. So that's you that needs to humble yourself to really have those conversations with other people and build them and buy into that vision. So again, these are skills that I feel that are very useful to display and to show, to step into the executive level as well. There's always something about winning people over. Often my son, one of my sons who's 10, always says, when I'm older, Mummy, I want to be a leader because I want everyone to listen to me and do what I say. And I have to tell him that is not what leadership is about. In fact, for me, I am the most humble person in my organization because I need all of you to listen and to believe in what I'm saying, where we should go. So that means that I need to build those connections, have those discussions, hear people's worries and fears. So that's listening, that's being able to build trust, that's being able to hear what people say and to develop those as well and to take them on board and work collaboratively with people. So these are all skills as well that are very much needed to step up into that level. So it's not as easy as my son seems to think that everyone will listen to you, because actually when people are disgruntled, it's you. When things are going wrong, it's you. And at the moment, for my CEO with the bankruptcy, even though she wasn't involved in it, it's her name that's on the newspaper. It's her name that's on the news. So there's something there as well that is very, very vulnerable about that position, but also requires you to lean in and build those connections with others as well. I know I've gone over time, so I'm very sorry, but I am at the end right now. So I just wanted to end on this phrase, because I know everything that I've spoke about is either thinking about leadership styles or compassion. But as I mentioned at the beginning, the foundations that I've had have been very strongly built by my parents in the Lord, in their own love as well. And this is something that has really guided me as well. So I couldn't talk about strategies without moving to God and to the grace that God has given me to do so as well, or the love of my parents. So I've kind of gone very quickly through those different strategies, but I will open up to questions and then have a dialogue and communicate on those as well. Thank you.
That was beautiful. That was superb. That was a crash leadership course, or should I say a mini MBA in 20 minutes? Yeah, you should pay for that. All right, lovely. Let's give her a round of applause, please. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for coming to share your experience with us. So we'll take a few questions. Oh no, I knew there'll be many hands. Right, okay. So there are 4 hands. Okay, those are all the questions we'll be taking. So we'll come to you. So let's start from Jonathan. So yeah. Jonathan you work in cybersecurity, don't you? Right. So
I think so. Thank you for that session. So I have 3 questions, which I'm trying to see. Right. So yes, you mentioned your experience with your manager, that you were on the same age rather, and you had some issues. Like, could you expand on that? How you were able to like bridge that gap, and Nigel, you said she's your biggest fan. Like, how were you able to do your job? Also, like, did you encounter any challenge as a Black professional, and how were you able to navigate that? And last one is, so while all of these might seem like, okay, we're being strategic, and of course, that's the point. But sometimes I worry, like, would people not say like sometimes being artificial? So how do you like do that? Even though you know that you're not being artificial, but if people tend to see it that way, how do you navigate that?
thank you. We'll move on to the second question. Right, so that's Yinka. Yinka works with Goldman Sachs.
Thank you very much for the very insightful presentation. My question is like a 2-in-1 and has parts of what he also asked. And that is, how did you manage the intersectionality of being Black, a woman, office politics, and career advancement? Thank you.
That's very straightforward. Thank you. I'm coming to you, bro. Okay. Has your question been asked? Okay, so that's sistership. Yeah, she works. Yeah. It's HMRC.
Thank you very much, Temitope. Like to call you at work. I've got 5 questions.
I correct them.
Don't mind.
By the way, I correct them so that they say my name properly.
Oh,
They've all learned to
I
say
do that as well,
Temitope very properly.
Yeah. So, one of my questions has been asked, so I'm going to be asking it as a woman now. What biases did you have to break as a Black woman? It's been all rosy all along in your presentation. That was why I tended to cut on board. There are challenges that I have faced. The want of time would not help me to explain that. Some of them would, okay, I'll leave them. But what personal challenges do you have to face? Because there's also this difference between Black people that I have personally come to just recognize. There's the first category of people who are Black and immigrants like myself who grew up back in Nigeria or here. I don't have the accent like you do. That's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Two, there's the Black people of the category which you fall under, and some of our children here, the one who were born here. And of course, we have imbibed the culture, the language, the aspect. I'm still assimilating. I've lived here for over 5 years, but I'm still learning. And then there's this third category of Black people who are Caribbeans who do not even see themselves as Black, but we are all merged together when we have this BIM community at work. But some of the challenges they face are quite different from what we face. I'm sure some of the challenges you face would definitely be different from mine. So what are your own personal challenges and how to overcome them? Secondly, how do you manage workplace conflict? I'm currently in middle management. I'm aspiring to move to the C-suite soon enough, but how do you manage conflict, especially being raised as a deeper lifer, a Christian, who are taught not to even be confrontational? How do you say there's the bias already that when you even come to raise an issue, that you are the aggressive Black woman?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so you're not even supposed to challenge anything at all. Three, workplace introvertism. You say you are not workplace introvertism.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
am not an introvert. I don't see myself as one. Some people might say, yes, some people here might say I'm extroverted, but at work, there's this code switching that comes,
Yeah.
yes, that comes upon me, and I'm like, this is a different person. You say bring your whole self to work, but can they really handle my whole self? If I bring my whole self, the whole African woman that I am, can they really handle it? Four, you talked about coaching. It's just were you coaching others or were you being coached? Is it a kind of reverse mentorship thing, or you know were you attending sessions where you were being coached, or were you the person coaching? And five, how do you motivate those you lead? When you have apathy, you have your subordinates who you're leading, who you assign tasks to, and then you're like, why should I respond to that Black woman? Why should she believe in me? How do you do that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this bro Lookere, he's a nurse. Get it?
Thank you very much. I just have two basic questions. Number one, I'm less than 2 years in the United Kingdom, and I'm not even yet the middle grade something. But then, I'm also aspiring to this C-suite thing. But then, my experience so far had been like I'm working in a closed circuit thing. Closed circuit in the sense that people that are actually in high office does not really want you to know what the office entails. They're not even interested in showing you what and what. Even when you try to you're trying to be inquisitive and you want to say, oh, please, can I just shadow you? You see them like, you want to take off my job and they're like that. Now, so my question is, how do you then explore administration within a closed circuit system in a bid to at least forge ahead? That's number one. Number two, how then do you thrive among difficult subordinates? That's another question. I work in the NHS, and as a nurse, we have some subordinates working under you, whichever way. And honestly, they can make life frustrating and difficult. And even occasionally, when they see that you have some experiences back at home and you're trying to bring it for, they get intimidated. And then, so how do we handle this? Thank you.
Wow. Can you ask in 3 sentences?
I aspire to be an educational psychology. I learned English, studied English in school, and I teach English in a secondary school here in the UK. I've come to understand that the country has a kind of quota system for the number of educational psychologists that they will be training at the PhD level. I am seeing a challenge already that is kind of intimidating me, sort of. How do you think I can navigate my way through? Maybe it's something I should actually see you personally. So please, let's keep this question out to you personally.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got 2 questions. First is, coming in from Nigeria, I work in an industry where it's a very small niche. So the demand is high, but the supply is very few. So I used to tell people I don't care about what my CV looks like. I don't care about what my LinkedIn looks like. If I need a job, I'll get one because I don't need to talk to. But then I came into the UK, same industry, but my first job, okay, an actuary in training. So in Nigeria, in the whole of the country, there are less than 10 qualified actuaries. So it makes it very crazy. And less than 50 actuaries in training. So I got here, my first job, the company had over 300 qualified actuaries under their PO. And just was one single company. And it became like, wow. And in then interacting with people, you see, there's actually nothing special about it. There is really nothing they know that you don't know, but because of the way our educational system is, we have the experience first before we go after the qualification. They go after the qualification and then learn the experience. So that takes me to my second question. One of my colleagues was leaving, and I was asking him for feedback, and he was like, "Corey, you do too much, and you're too nice with your work. You do a lot, but you don't talk about it. You see, look at these grads. They do this, and they're making us all over the place. See, you do way more than all of them. So how do you do in that kind of a situation where yeah, and I mean, is it Chinua Achebe who says, if you don't blow your trumpet, nobody will blow it for you. And for us in a Christian background, we're taught to be humble. You just do the thing. And then, you might actually, sorry, I'm asking this question. You might actually do maybe a presentation of 3 or 4 people and maybe do 90% of the work. And then when it comes to present to maybe top level management, the person who's at the front and who is making all of the noise, he didn't do anything. Can you keep quiet unless, so how do you, I suppose the question is, how do you learn to speak up and own what you have done, your successes are not at somebody, because again, it happens, people take advantage. Yeah, that sort of thing. Thank you. I really don't know I don't know how much time you have because that's a lot of very, very important questions.
There are lots
Thank
of
you.
questions, and I'm very happy to speak with anyone personally as well. But just in terms of that last statement that you made, it made me think about my children. If I take them out, and you say being raised as Christians, but culturally also we're taught. I was born here, but very much raised in Lagos, in Manchester, with my parents. But I was also taught to always stay at the, keep quiet, stay at the back. Now, if I take my children somewhere, I take them right to the front and I say, stand at the front, make sure they hear you, talk to them. Because if children that are white children will automatically go to the front and want to be there at the front. I have taught my children, you go right to the front, make sure they see you, they know you, they hear you. So it's a complete change in that. And there is something around having to blow your own trumpet. It's something that I've had to learn uncomfortably to do. But something that I'm confident of doing it now. I will state if I've done something, I'll let them know that I've done something. So it's a very different change, but I'll come on to that anyway. So I'll start with Jonathan and your questions around navigating with age being something that goes against me. In fact, everyone in the executive suite are either my parents' age or older. They're white, and I'm the only Black female and person that's under the age of 40. So it definitely stands not in my advantage to be there. But I'm very proud to have all of those characteristics. And you did say, and some of the points tie over with your own about being a Black professional. And like you said, I painted a very rosy picture of the jump. It is a very hard jump. It's very difficult. But you've mentioned something. I do have a British accent, and that's something that they actually hear. So sometimes I'd go out shopping with my mum. My mum would say something, they wouldn't listen. I'd say it, they listen. And I have to tell them, we both said the same thing. She just said it with an accent. So it is something that stands against, and I completely agree with you. But I've done a lot on my journey of understanding myself as a Black female. And if I knew you were going to ask those questions, my presentation would have been very different, because I've got a lot to say about being Black, about being female, about those intersections and how you're trying to navigate them. So it probably is another conversation to have, but there is something of, yeah, brilliant. But there is something around how I'm very mindful of being Black and who I am. I'm mindful of being typecasted and stereotyped as someone who's aggressive. I'd have a conversation with someone like the girl that I was talking about. Girl, she's a woman, she's same age as me. The woman that I was talking about that's also a head of service, and we had a conversation. She left crying and said that I was very aggressive, even though we just spoke to each other. But there's these things that I'm very mindful of. So when I spoke with her, I made sure that my PA was outside the room, the door was open, I had people that could witness to say, because I know the things that they will accuse me of. So I'm very mindful of those. So there's something about really educating and preparing yourself. And I was speaking often with my partner during the George Floyd murder. There was like a wave of where people wanted to speak about you being Black and everything else. That wave it's falling now. So there's definitely people are not really interested anymore because all lives matter now instead of Black Lives Matter. So there's something there that people were quite open to speak about. And during that time, I was very vocal about being Black, about being a woman, and about navigating things. And I have very transparent conversations. So my like I said, the CEO is a Black lady, but then also the different executive directors, he's white, he's male. We have very honest conversations. And I said to him, I'm coming in and I'm a Black woman. So I really want to have conversations around what that means. Even with my team of heads of service, they're all white. And I've said to them, I don't know if any of you have had a Black manager before, but there's something about how you need to give me a chance. You need to give me opportunities. You really need to think about the way that you speak with me. So I'm very open about being Black female. I'll name it. I put it on the table as one of the first things each time so that people know that they can engage in those conversations with me. But I'm very confident with it. But there's something around the emotional intelligence of sensing how that's landing for people. So I'll also know that whilst I start off in this way, I'm also sensitive to how it's landing for them and how I might change my conversation depending on there. So it's not just one way of doing it, but it's being sensitive and understanding where those conversations might have. There are other people that I'll speak to and name that, and they've just got a blank face and it just means absolutely nothing to them. So I'm not doing that. You mentioned around being stuck in an acute area. If I showed my CV, you'll see that I move from place to place to place to place. My sister's very different. So she's been in Unilever for, I think, 16 years now. It's not something that I would do because I move from place to place because I want to grow, I want to develop, I want to learn more and new things. So different places bring me different, brings different things out of me. There's different situations and there's lots of learning there. I would love to speak more around navigating as a Black female, but it is very difficult. There's been times where I have been accused of aggression. I have been accused of not collaborating with people, even though I have collaborated with people. I have been accused of being overconfident. Whereas I always say, if it's a white male saying this, how would this land for you? And it's okay for me. There's an article that in The Guardian that was if Boris Johnson was a Black woman, would he still have had his job? Would he have been a prime minister as long as he was? So there's so many things there in this in this country that you need to be alert and aware about. But I could definitely have more conversations about that. But I'm very secure in my Blackness, in being female, and I'll name it and I'll own that as well. It's something to name. If I haven't answered all your questions, Jonathan, I'm more than happy to speak as well. And Yinka, I think it's very similar around managing that intersectionality. So again, more than happy. And you know, being Black female or Black male, there's differences and there's similarities with that as well. But again, in terms of the executive suite, I talk about the advantages that come with being Black and being able to talk about different communities and how things land. So I use it as I leverage it and I use it as a superpower that I have that I'm able to speak through as well. You've mentioned, sorry, I didn't get your name. Shade, lovely to meet you. You'd mentioned something around, I often talk about being born in this country, but my parents being Nigerian, and I've had to straddle two cultures all my life. I've had to code switch. So I naturally code switch. You naturally code switch. This is something that people have to learn to do, but it's something that we can do quite naturally. But you've mentioned about bringing your whole self. I've got lots of views on bringing your whole self because there's often that invitation to do so. But like you said, are people ready for the whole me? So there's elements of me that I would bring. Definitely. There's elements that I know probably isn't the best to bring here. So it's also being able to judge and read the situation. And that's where that emotional intelligence comes in. because I can have very candid, open conversations with my CEO, who is very, very open when I speak with her, but I've seen her with other people and she'll be very guarded. And similarly, there's people that you know that you can be open with. There's others, and even when I say open, it's open, quote, unquote, yeah. So it's not everything that I'm there talking about, but there's a strategy called like personal narratives. That's something, it's not private narratives, but personal narratives. I use a lot of personal narratives to win people over. So I would often talk and connect about values. I often give examples within myself. So people think I'm very transparent and very open. They know what I want them to know, but they also know that I'm speaking from the heart. So you'd mentioned around that you'd mentioned around the artificial nature of talking about yourself and wanting to reach out. There's something in the values that I have that I'm very honest and open about, and it's that I would talk from. So like I said, I share personal narratives. People know about my children what I want them to know, but people know about it. I can often find areas of connecting with, and that's how I often win people over as well. You spoke about workplace conflict. Yeah, that's again, that's another separate talk, but I've often had to swallow my pride, swallow what I'm feeling, even though I'm feeling something and I really feel aggrieved by it. Sorry, it's my little girl. So I swallow that, and I'm able to have conversations that isn't around my emotions. I'm able to think about what's best for this situation. And if it means that I can't stress myself enough, if it means I have to humble myself, I absolutely will. I really don't mind who I'm speaking with, because the goal is that I need us to get along. In order to do what we need to do, we need to be able to get along. And so many times, and I can talk about the conflict that's brought to my door from people from our cultures, it's often people from our cultures that are fighting with each other, and then they stop talking to each other. I never go to that level. I want to resolve it. I want to resolve it because I know it's best for you, and I know it's best for me as well. So in terms of navigating conflicts, I often don't take them personally, but it's hard to do so. And it means swallowing a lot. But like I said, in terms of this other member of staff that now is my absolute fan, I went through a period of really not liking this woman, really like having to really gird myself up to sit in a room with her, to her now being very open and very honest with me. And like I said, she's my biggest fan, but I went through that period of personal pain in order to do that. But it's never easy. But again, we could talk about that as well. You'd mentioned around workplace introvert, but yeah, I don't know if I've touched on that already. But there's something around, I often talk about, because even in academia as well, it's very similar. I have lots of Black females who often fail in terms of the context of psychology when we're talking about being reflective. And that's because they are not able to bring their whole selves, or think about them working with the mask on, mask off. But that's a lot, but I could talk to you again about that afterwards in terms of the workplace introvert. I am noticing the time. You'd also asked about coaching. I didn't do reverse coaching, but I do coaching. But in the periods that I'm talking about, I was coached. I've always been coached, and I would never do anything without being coached, because with everything that happens, you need a space where you can punctuate all of that and actually just think about and reflect on some of my actions and where I'm going and what's happening here. And I really do believe in intentionality and really knowing, and your planning. So my coach definitely knows that this role that I have, I've said I'll be in it for a year, 18 months. I'm already applying for next jobs because I don't stay for more than 2 years, but I'm already applying for next jobs. So she knows this. So we're already talking about what else do I need to get from this job in order to get to the next place. But I also do coach, but that's from my clinical background as well. But I do recommend coaching for yourselves. You had spoken around, and I'm so sorry, the nurse, I didn't get his name. Benga, thank you. You had spoken around being able to step out. So if you're in an organization and if you ask to shadow, people think that you're taking your jobs. This is why I go to another place. So I did a lot of volunteering. So I would go into different places and get experience in other places as well, because people do feel sometimes that you're trying to get their jobs. And also I move from job to job. And if you're a nurse, I think you have the ability to move from place to place to place and to be building your skills. You're not moving because you've upset anyone or you don't like it. You're moving because you've got a plan and you know what you need to get from here, what you need to get from there as well. And then volunteering is also something that I would always recommend, something that I have always done, still do, because that's the way that I will know things in other areas as well. You had mentioned striving with difficult subordinates. I don't know if it's a language thing, but I don't even use the word subordinate. I talk about people as my peers, as people that I work with, and I guess my approach is one that people, if I'm talking with a cleaner, she doesn't feel like she's speaking with a director. She's speaking with another person who's very interested in what she's doing. So even my language, my approach to people is I will not ask you to do something that I wouldn't do. I would get the brush and I'll sweep, and we'll be talking and I'll sweep as well with her. So I think that there's something around people in lower paid positions or jobs that feel quite oppressed. It's something that I would never want to do. I don't like people feeling oppressed, and I'm very open with people that when I'm working with them, with different healthcare professionals or health workers, they're working in jobs that my mum works in, and I happily work with my mum. I happily work with them. So it comes back to that compassionate leadership and leading with empathy, leading with love, leading with kindness. And with that, I really have people that will do things that ordinary. They'll say, I'll do it for you. I won't do it for her or him, but I'll do it for you. And it is that relational based approach that I feel is helpful. So even if people work for you or underneath you, I'm not even comfortable with that phrase, because for me, we're all peers, we're all here working for a reason. So hopefully that might be something that's helpful. It's a different approach. It's not hierarchical. I use the term heterarchical, not hierarchical, but I work heterarchically, where we're not looking at boundaries and at bands and at labels, but we're all here to do a job, and we connect on our values of why we're here as well. And then you had mentioned, and the person is the actress, I've forgotten his name. What was Ore? You had mentioned around so your first one was a statement, so I didn't really get the question, but it might have been something around standing out. So you've gone from very niche to here where there's lots of actuarists, and something about standing out. I don't know if that was your question, but I guess one of the things that I wrote here was working smarter, not harder, is very important. And that means, and it's something that I would do, is put in all the hours of the day. I'd do so much work, but it wasn't working smart. It wasn't making sure that if I did a presentation, the director knew that it was me that did it. I would often do things, and I had examples after examples where I'll come up with ideas and then everyone else has grabbed them and taken them, and I'll be like, oh well, I don't want to have to say that it was me. Now I say it was me. It was me that had that thought and that idea, and here's some more. And if you need to know more, here's some more about it, because you need to be able to blow your own trumpet. There's no other way that they'll know who you are. And for me, growing up, I had white friends who were very, very comfortable chatting to my dad, calling him by his first name. I couldn't even look at an adult in the eye like that or make that eye contact. It's things that I've had to learn to do with confidence. It's some things that hasn't ever come naturally to me, but something that I've been determined to do, and something that you absolutely can do as well. So there's the working smarter, not harder, and also being your own biggest fan. No one will know who you are, what you do, unless you're the one that's saying it. And also being strategic with who you're saying it to, so that your name is at the tongue of the people at the top. Like I said, if people need a job being done, they know that Ore is someone that we can rely on, someone that can do it. But also, it's not just being the workhorse and someone that you rely on. It's also bringing those innovations, those solutions that they're really curious and interested to know more of what you've got. I've got lots of examples of where I've absolutely been used. And I've had a director that said, that was a great idea. Thanks, Temitope. That got me really right. Like the CEO was really happy with what you said to me that I've given to there. And even there in that example, it's something that I took to my coach to speak about. What do? I then sent an email to the CEO and said, my director and I had these conversations. I'm really glad she brought it to you. There's more ideas that I have on this if you really want to hear more of this. And with that, yeah, exactly. And with that, she contacted me, and then I helped to develop something. So it's really thinking strategically as well. And it is something that's not natural, but it's something that you would definitely need to grow and learn into. I think I've covered them all. I'm not sure, but
very much. A round of applause, please. A round of applause. Thank you very, very much. You see, this session is so interesting. I have questions for her. We don't have time to ask. I'm sure there are loads of questions here that we don't have time to ask, but we do have to go for lunch. But before we go, I want 10 people to tell me what they've learned, because this is, like I said, this is a crash MBA course. This is how do you move on to the next level? Serious. How do you move from mid management to top TL management? That's it. That's what we're doing. And it's the soft skills. We have a lot of extremely educated people amongst us. There are PhDs everywhere. We need to start using it to get in the door and up those ladders where we need to be. The very educated people amongst us. We need to start having many more CEOs and directors and company owners and people running multi-million pound companies. We need to have that amongst us. So 10 things. Just shout it wherever you are. Rosanne, go on. Soft skills. You need soft skills. Yeah. Yeah, soft skills. People must like you if you want to meet them. Bottom line. Soft skills. Anyone else? Yeah, bro, you can go on. Alliances, connections. You cannot be the one who doesn't speak to people in the workplace. You cannot lead those people. It's not possible. Thank you very much. Go on. Confidence. Launch. We'll be out here. Thank you. Thank you. Confidence. 3. Solution. Provide solution. Compassion. Empathy. There are some other things I'm looking for, brother. Humility. Huh? Strategy. You must see. Let me summarize it in my own words. Go on. Emotional intelligence. Huh? Your mind must shift. And what was your mind shift from? From learning how to use Excel very well to learning how to manage 15 people who use Excel. Thinking, I think that's the biggest thing here. We must stop being we have a lot of technical people amongst us. We need to start thinking, I've done enough of this now. How do I manage people who do this? I think that's the thing. And it's from what I can gather from what she said, it's thinking. You have to be strategic thinking. You have to learn to provide solutions to the problems that haven't happened yet. So if you're an engineer now, you're working in, say, we have a doctor of electrical engineering. We need to start thinking, how do we manage net zero? How do we move on? We need to be there because that's where the managers, that's what they're thinking. So thank you very, very much. She's still around and she'll still take questions if you want to see her. A round of applause. Another one, please. Thank you very much. That was very, very insightful.